All right. So just as a overview, since we didn't record the first one, the reason I set up this call with you, Jeremy, was so we could discuss how interaction designers might be able to better wear the visual designer hat when they're creating their designs. Is there any sort of tooling or education or something or other like that that we can provide to help designers do that kind of work? We had a long talk about various things that I've outlined in the agenda. Some of the things I added I took, and then after our call, I put together in a possible solutions list, which is at the bottom section. Have you had a chance to look at those?
Yeah, I think. Over there. Yeah, and I think that, let's see here. Yeah, I added some additional considerations to that.
Okay.
Is that what you're?
Yeah, that section. I thought that was you. I couldn't remember doing that. So I was like, wait, where'd those come from?
Yeah, yep.
Okay. Maybe we go through these two lists for the video, and then we'll talk about a question that Andy posed. So some possible solutions to how we might do this: update issue templates to include a more robust definition of done. I had mentioned before a concept that Andy and I were talking about that I was calling definition of ready for design, or something similar to that. The bottom line is team members should have a clear idea of what they're designing for before they begin designing. So maybe there's some sort of something that lets them know that while you're doing your workflows and general layouts and making sure all the requirements and user needs are met, you should also then take that hat off and put on the visual designer hat to make sure you're doing a scrub for layout, for accessibility, those types of things. Do you want to talk about these, or do you want to I can just read through the list?
Let's just read through that, yeah.
Okay. Another idea is to update a Figma template to reinforce inspiration gathering and exploration that leverages the needs of the issue being designed for. So I think when we talked about this, you were sort of getting at kind of the way that you look at things, where you kind of gather everything into one place, almost like a mood board kind of thing. Maybe make sure the requirements are there, a place where you can go to look at and remind yourself what it is that you're trying to accomplish, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe there's like a special page or something or maybe even a section on the main design page at the top where they can put all the stuff, something to that effect.
Yeah. And I think with that, you had linked or shared with me an example that Andy put together,
right?
That had that in Figma. So yeah, some really good rigor around how to capture ideas and kind of table stakes for that design effort. So.
Yeah, that could be a cool one. And in fact, all of these or multiples of them, combination could probably be nice to have. Mm-hmm. The next one, provide/communicate suggested process for team members as they move through their phases of design. So interaction design phase, visual design phase, accessibility phase. So that's kind of what I was getting at when taking on and putting on, removing and putting on a hat kind of thing. So accessibility, each phase has overlaps with one another as designers should and likely are considering all of them as they go. So this is maybe blue lines, based on your presentation that you gave a couple weeks ago in Showcase, that type of stuff. Mm-hmm. Provide tools to reference when wearing the visual designer and accessibility hats interaction design tools abound in our handbook, though we shouldn't assume that we have all that is needed, though this is secondary concern due to what we have now. So I think what I'm getting at here is we have tons of stuff on heuristics and things to consider when doing a design, but we don't necessarily have anything like that from a visual design perspective. And I think actually Andy's question at the top alludes to this too, is there some sort of set of principles or heuristics or something where designers can reference when they're putting on that designer hat to make sure that it's covering all the things that we'd like people to consider. Next one, make clear that the design system has its place and purpose, but it's not the end of our visual design path. It's the starting point. Designers should feel empowered to step off the path if it's warranted to solve their design problems. Sub-bullet is there a way to provide principles? So same idea, principles, heuristics, something to that effect. That does keep coming up. And as you're highlighting, it has occurred to me that I should share this. Okay. So this is where we just were, right? Yeah. So now we're this one. Provide a supplemental visual design / accessibility review that's done by a subset of team members once the interaction design has been done. So this idea is similar to the review process where we post to the UX channel and people jump in and provide feedback, but maybe there's a marker that we can put on something that says this is, I'm asking for review, not necessarily from a interaction design perspective, but more of a visual design. Is there, give me thoughts on, from that perspective, layout, accessibility, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Valerie started doing something like that a couple weeks ago, but I don't know if she's going to continue it. She called for anyone that wants her to take a look at stuff. So it's kind of in line with that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then your additional considerations, did you want to go over those?
Yeah, just some of the things I've thought about was if we try to emphasize more on visual design, to actually just include that just directly as a part of hiring, because product design, UX design, it's all so broad that if we're not targeting that part of the spectrum, then I think we're missing out on some opportunities there. And then the converse to that is that not everyone has a desire or propensity to do that today. And so to make that expectation after the fact, there could be a challenge. So I feel like we should have some sort of a process in place that just has an awareness of that, so that a bait and switch thing where you were hired for one skill and then you're being asked to really focus on another, where we can effectively complement it, balance that out.
Yeah.
And
that
then
makes sense.
The second is to consider a more like official effort to use formal requirements and acceptance criteria. I feel like that in my own work and here, this is one of the most critical aspects in making something better at every level. But the moment we're not really asking all the questions or solving all the right problems, we might be just addressing and kind of skipping a stone across the problem, but not looking at how everything from semantics to accessibility to the visual, like all those different requirements and considerations that would go into it to help define boundaries and constraints, and at the same time enable us to know that we fully satisfied it and delivered on MVC or delivered on that iteration. We don't really have those well defined today to know that. And likewise for testing, just for QA, QE, having those kind of qualifications in place, I think would be a benefit.
Are you talking more about qualifications, or are you talking about a checklist, like a definition of done?
It could be kind of both. I think acceptance criteria would be kind of, once that's satisfied, is like a definition of done. So it would be, we'd have to kind of tease that out, what that might look like more formally. But I think it's a little larger than just a definition, because the acceptance criteria will be something that we can validate, and QA testing would be able to actually go back and validate those individual criteria, not just against a definition, but of actual testable items.
Right, but then team members would have to have that background knowledge in order to even be able to apply it, right? And I think that's a great point.
Yeah, what I found is that so traditionally, just like a little bit of my background, I've come from more like of a rigor where there is grooming sessions, there's planning sessions, there's requirements gathering. So where you have multiple disciplines actually weighing in, and because of that, you're increasing that designer's awareness and knowledge of things that they might not know just out of the box. So if you know, an engineer is in there and they're like, okay, you want to use this is a new component, that's great, but it's going to live in Haml and Ruby. We know that, okay, just a view component, GitLab UI is not going to do that. So, you know, that, okay, now you have an awareness that where the scope is increased, or how you might address different accessibility parameters or different conditional items. Those are things that would bring awareness to a designer to know, oh, I've got to design for these situations and these scenarios that are going to come up. Empty states, error states, you know, things like that you'd want somebody to think through, where as a designer, you might think, I'm just designing this screen and this experience, but you're not thinking about all the ways it could break or all the other things that might go into building it. So,
okay, and some of that should be happening already. I mean, you sort of outlined a more traditional agile workflow with the specific planning stage and grooming and backlogs and things like that. But to some degree, we should still be doing that. Each designer should be working with their counterparts prior to a milestone beginning to essentially do that. I don't know if a lot of PMs have a prioritized backlog and things like that at the moment. Some may. I know for a fact don't. But I don't want to speak for everyone. But anyway, so with that said, there should also be a lot more collaboration earlier with their engineering counterparts too. So it's possible that that's lacking across certain groups.
And that's where a lot of that requirements gathering would come in, where you can weigh the business case and then weigh how you're going to build it, how you're going to design it. And I think we can greatly leverage GitLab to do that, in an async way. So yeah. So to your point, the milestone planning and whatnot, I that's definitely happening, but it's that actual granular like requirements gathering and understanding those types of aspects that, at least in my experience, I've seen.
And when you're saying requirements, that's different than user needs requirements, like this feature needs to be able to do X, Y, and Z. This is also about the technical requirements. What can?
Yep. So what I've done before is where you would actually have, I work with Jira and whatnot, where you'd have a story that would address each one of those, and it could be any of those. It could be, what are the user requirements? What are the technical requirements? What are the accessibility requirements? It's all of those. So and by having multiple disciplines weigh in at that same time during that requirements, as a designer, you learn that, okay, if I'm doing making this component, whatever it might be, when I understand the accessibility requirements or the other statefulness, or how a developer might need to construct it, I'm going to design it more mindfully, and aware of that, rather than building something and then later it's like, well, we can't implement it that way, or that's actually going to create a really inaccessible solution, or, by having that at the same time, it creates more better information to design from.
Yeah, so I know that our workflows, our documented workflows, do stress collaborating and essentially doing this, but I think maybe what's not there is it's not looking at it from a accessibility perspective, right? We're only looking at constraints. What does the back end provide? What's difficulty from an MVC level?
I think there's that, but we're also not. I don't see it like documented necessarily and checked off. Like we're not really dog fooding our own requirements feature in the product, and then looping back to ensure that those are solved. And again, like it's like these are like broad brushstroke statements, just based on my experience and what I've seen. I'm sure that there are teams that are doing that, but
okay, definitely something to look into. The next one.
Yeah, and I think I guess this kind of a stream of thought here, but the approach today is more from a UX standpoint is more about solving UX problems, but not necessarily in parallel the UI accessibility or responsive. Those other types of problems aren't always solved at the same time.
Right.
So,
okay, good points. Next one.
And just as part of the work process, I think there could be visual and accessibility reviews, kind of like if you're familiar with if this and that, but just that kind of approach that would trigger those reviews if certain conditions are met, where up front during milestone planning, you would know that, okay, we got a checkpoint, we got this review label, whatever it is. We know that there's more rigor around triggering those events so that they happen more frequently and consistently.
So that almost makes me think that there's a I guess, workflow label in the product development flow that you're almost suggesting, right? Because there is this design workflow design label, which is that process, but then there are sub steps, I think, that you're getting at. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's kind of like, workflow. You're inserting kind of that workflow review kind of in the middle of, of design and development or whatever. It's
like we have the review breakdown review, which is not this. It's more for working with your engineer to see how you might need to MVC a particular design issue and break it down for development. But there isn't. I don't think there's a review for design, right? So let's see.
I feel like it's more ad hoc,
Yeah, for sure. And I think you're saying something very similar to what I had alluded to, is that we need a set of steps that is hard coded, so.
And it doesn't turn it into a waterfall, right? Because some of this stuff actually happens through the process. Like you should be thinking about accessibility at the start and the middle and the end, all of it. You should be designing to that. But the discipline is just having that, those kind of reviews happen, which I think also helps offset when you have different skill sets doing the work. It helps offset that as well, because you're allowing those other people that do have those skill sets to weigh in and whatnot.
Yeah, so we go from workflow design to solution validation, breakdown, ready for development. There's nothing inside of the workflow design that could allude to this sort of path or mindset.
I'm curious if any of those workflow labels could even be more granular about requirements gathering,
Yeah, they're implied, right? Like the when you're in backlog or problem validation, so I guess workflow backlog is when you've got an idea and you're not ready to do anything with it. Then you put it into problem validation when you need to suss out the details. If you don't have enough knowledge to know how to move forward, then you'd go and interview users to flesh out their needs, and that would help with the requirements. It's implied through our other workflows that while you're doing this, that you should be collaborating with your team, to ensure that you're understanding user requirements, technical requirements, and at that point, you should also be, considering accessibility. Like I think what's missing is these explicit statements that say, consider IXD, consider visual design, consider accessibility. Just because, I don't even know if this is true, but I have a feeling that it's just because it's relatively new. A lot of us have worked in companies in the past that we think they're important, but it wasn't the driving factor. So we didn't have the opportunity to do a lot of this stuff. Now at GitLab, we are given this opportunity and we do care about it. We want to make sure it's being done. But it's, it might be something we're just not focusing on because we're just used to not doing it.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a good point about so many things being maybe implied, but not explicit. And we could probably do a better job of pulling out implications and making them more concrete.
Yeah, I think that's ultimately what we're getting at. So we need to figure out a way to make it more explicitly part of our workflows, whatever that means, whatever the solution is. And then we need to figure out a way to give designers the tools to do that, while also being aware of what you said earlier, that not every interaction designer wants to be a visual designer or wear that hat. So there has to be a way for us to, that's another problem that we need to solve. There has to be a way for us to work around that scenario, which is maybe other people can come in and help with providing that visual design assessment. And I'm using visual design as a blanket for accessibility and all of the other, background detail stuff. And I know that a couple of weeks ago, Tori had updated a few of our team members' details. There's an expert bullet, and a few of the designers have been added as visual design experts. So maybe there's something where if you're not one of those interaction designers that has the wherewithal to do visual design reviews, you might call in one of those people to help or to run an assessment. Or again, maybe we drop them into the channel and they put a emoji or something that says, this is a visual design review request, as opposed to specifically interaction or generically anything, So, okay. So going to Andy's question, which we briefly sort of alluded to, is there any way to put together or define UI principles for designers to follow? Simple do's and don'ts that could address a majority of the problems, i.e. don't use boxes to define context or content hierarchy when it is okay to use boxes containers. Yeah, so that was kind of my impetus for when I pinged you initially on Slack, was there was classes, anything on LinkedIn, learning, are there, we have heuristics in UX or interaction design, which are very solid and known design principles for interaction design type stuff. Some of them fall into visual design to some degree, but I'm wondering if there's something even more specific from a visual design perspective. And I think that your answer was not really. I mean, just the Gestalt stuff, we briefly talked about that.
Yeah, because it's so nuanced when you talk about. I mean, because principles in general will get you so far, and that that in of itself takes time to practice and discern and know what to pick up on. But then when you talk about a specific brand aesthetic on top of that, all of a sudden you're trying to apply those principles through the lens of the brand, or the UI, whatever the goals of that UI are, and so that it's kind of a layer cake, and then you talk about subjectivity and stuff like that. So it gets a bit of a challenge to do things in a way that you could just teach a course on it, right?
Yeah.
So I think that we would have to do a multi-layer process where here's just basic design principles. If you're really wanting to learn UI design, here's where you should go to do that. Then there's the other side of things of like, here's how we apply those principles to GitLab. If we're to just jump into that without somebody understanding the principles, then they're not really going to be able to carry them forward in their own work, right? Because they're just seeing one instance of how a principle is applied, not necessarily what the practice in general looks like or how you might be thinking about it before ever going to pixels. So that's where it gets a bit more of a specific discipline.
Yeah, that makes sense. First define the principles, then make sure that everyone's got an understanding of how to apply them within the company. And then with that, you would start to get the understanding of our goals in terms of changing our design language, for instance, or the new principles from a design language perspective that we're trying to get to, like the unboxing concept.
And I think you just said a term that just kind of stands out to me, and that is like design language. That's something that I'll maybe spend some more time thinking about, because that might be just a great way to frame what we need to start shaping, if that, kind of in the same way you have your copywriting style guides and your voice and tone. Like, what is our visual voice and tone? And at least start there. That's still jumping in, like I said, to that middle layer where you see it, but at least there's something replicatable there to a degree, and you start to understand what that visual language is. But I think we can explore that further, and then backfill with some of the principles. It just takes time definitely takes a lot of time to put together stuff like that.
Yeah, of course. But journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step, right?
Yeah.
So I think what's that?
I was going to say, speaking of first step and whatnot, last step here, I got another meeting to jump to, but
yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say, I'm going to put together an issue, grab all this and put it in there, and then post it to everyone else so we can start collaborating with the team. But awesome stuff. I appreciate you coming, and thank you.
Yeah. Hope you enjoy the rest of your week.
Yeah, you too. Cheers.